Welcome to the Entrepreneur Motivation Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Bello. Today, I've got my friend Adam Courchaine on the show. Adam, welcome.
Hello, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Is it like Dr. Courchaine or like technically or like what? Is there a title or something?
No. I actually have like many titles. So it's kind of funny. So I am a PA, physician assistant. So
Cool.
in a clinical setting, I'm always Adam, PA. I actually do have a doctorate in clinical medicine. So I just finished that actually about a month and a half ago. So in any other settings, in an education setting or conferences, I could go by doctor. But I've spent almost 50 years in this earth as Adam, so that works.
Well, Adam, it's great to have you on the show. And for those who kind of follow my journey on social media and saw the little airsoft combat day, Adam was one of the folks on Green Team hunting us and throwing smoke
Yep.
grenades and doing really fun things. But if you'd like to do a quick background on who is Adam, I know you've got a lot
Sure.
going on your side. But if you have a cool elevator pitch that you like to introduce yourself as, go for it.
Sure. So I'm not a very salesy kind of guy. So I've been involved in health and wellness. It turns out just about 30 years. So I
Wow.
was an exercise physiologist for, I guess, about 8 years. Then I went back to school, became a PA, worked in a bunch of different settings. So I worked in internal medicine, pediatrics, geriatrics, hit the extremes. Joined the military. That's where the combat day came in. So yes, I am a major in the U.S. Army, and then worked at urgent care. Realized it stunk, so I started my own practice 5 years ago as a direct primary care, and then now we're pushing the envelope even further to do more and more with health and wellness. That's who
Very
we are.
cool. Yeah, and then we connected recently through a mutual friend, and I remember we did like the quick intro call, and you explained what you guys do
Yep.
in your clinic, more of the membership model, how you're just the costs are so affordable for getting blood panels and all those different types of tests done, as opposed to going through some other facility and you're not sure if they take your insurance, and then it's way more
Right.
expensive than it needs to be. And there's a lot of confusion around health and wellness in general. So I really appreciated your approach of, hey, let's see what's your diet looking like? How active
Yep.
are you? Not just trying to prescribe a pill for everything, right?
A pill for every ill. That's the way we phrase it. Yes, we have lots of pills. But yeah, if I just jump right into things and just go a little bit into that, my frustration, because by the way, I'm a human and I am a patient and different things like that myself, and so is my family. And I will tell you, if anyone treats their family different than they treat you, that's a problem,
Yeah.
and you should run. And the system is huge. So the healthcare system, and I just did a presentation on this, and I can tell you, in 2019 dollars, in 1970, we spent on average, I think it was about $1,850 per person per year. And now it's close to $12,000. So you say, oh, okay, and that's inflation accounted for. So what do we get for that? And then that same year, there was a Commonwealth report that compared us to, I think, 11 sister nations. So like Australia, UK, like nice places.
Yeah.
And by far, the US, worst health outcomes, shortest lifespan, highest suicide rates, horrible across the board. And that's the stuff that keeps me up at night. That's just silly. We have the best equipment, we have the best procedures, we have the best minds, we have the worst of all the outcomes. Like, what the hell is the problem?
Mhm.
And I can keep going if you want, but
Yeah.
I did the deep dive. I came back from a deployment in 2017, and I was like, God, I don't like heat so much, and it was 135 degrees there. And working in urgent care here in the fall was way worse. And I was like, I can't do this. It broke me. It really did. And that's when I started looking for my own thing. So I was never taught this in school. I've networked a lot in the past 5 years. And it turns out, so you're a realtor, right? You do things. You're involved with insurance sometimes,
Mhm.
and homeowners insurance. Who uses that for a new doormat in the front step? Like, that's silly. Or if you want new shades in the kitchen, like, you buy them or don't buy them. It's freedom.
Right.
But they're not covered. That's silly. Or if you have car insurance and you need tires, you go pay for them. Health insurance magically covers everything. What could go wrong? And then since the 1980s, it's premiums every year. It goes up by like 25%. That is not
Wow.
sustainable.
No.
Deductibles, co-pays, all this stuff. I'm rambling now. You get me going. But if that system, who's processing all those payments and billing and all that stuff? That's an administration. And I just did this last week. That's why it's all in my head. But
Yeah.
we
That's why
we
I was
spend
excited
about
to have you on here to like extract all
Yep.
that value off the top of your mind.
Well, in our healthcare system, I think it's about 34% is admin. So every dollar you spend, just take a third, throw it in the trash.
Gone.
So when you go see the family med doc or whoever it is you're going to see, usually they're really good people. They get all that advanced training because they're passionate about it. And now they're told, we're only going to keep about a quarter of that. So how do we make more money? Churn that hamster wheel. Keep it going, baby. And the only way you can practice in that setting is to say, Chris, what are you here for? You're like, well, I'm kind of sad today. Oh, here's an antidepressant. Great. Next. You go to the next room. What are you here for? I have a headache. Oh, here's a couple of Excedrin. Next. Nobody stops and says, why do you have that headache? Why do you have depression? Why do you have chronic fatigue or diabetes? Nope. We just treat it. And when they treat it, think about your family members or your friends. Who gets better? Nobody. It's expected to just slow it down a bit. So when mom has her diabetes, she's going to have it forever, and she will die from it. And hopefully we slow it down a little bit. That's the system. And for my family, that's certainly not good enough. There's no way in heck I'm going to tolerate that. Right. So can we get rid of, not all, can we get rid of a lot of diabetes? Yes. Anything chronic with lifestyle modification can be altered. And again, it might be too late. And that sounds horrible, but if you spend 30 years destroying your body, you can't always fix it, but you can improve it every time.
Yep. Right. And one thing I always talk about on my podcast is just awareness is key. I had another friend who does lifestyle fat loss recently, and he just talks about, he's very big on, drinking spring water, don't drink tap water, eat grass-fed meats from farmers market, stop going and getting like the Lucky Charms, the processed food with all the different ingredients that you can't read. And I mean, it's crazy to see how many kids are just going around and taking Doritos. Like if you look at their lunches, it's like bags of Doritos and Frito-Lay potato chips and those little cosmic brownies with the sprinkles on it. I think of all the things that I ate as a kid and we just didn't know any better, right? Yep. Like it's not really taught, and they actually sell that kind of stuff in the lunch cafeteria in many of these schools.
Definitely. And some other fresh stats are for adults over 19. 30% are overweight and almost 43% are obese. So that means, is obesity and overweight normal for the Homo sapien animal? No, but it's average now. So what about kids? And my 18-year-old was in the room and I was like, doing this little thing, getting ready for my presentation thing. And don't quote me on the exact number for kids, but it was something like 9 or 10% are overweight. And I think it was 12 or 14% are obese. The number in the end was like, whatever, it's like 34%. That is not normal. And, I'm a little older than you, but go back to the 1980s, 1950s, I wasn't here. But not that long ago, it was unheard of. There was no childhood obesity, essentially. The stats was like 1%. Right. And now we're tolerating and accepting that 33, 34%, okay, it happens. And then when I studied medicine about 20 years ago, there was no type 2 diabetes in children. Now there is. Yep. Wow. So it's insane. And to that point, people talk about evolution. No, I don't believe in that. Well, whatever. For a human, we're part of a human species, but our brand of species is a Homo sapien. So we've been on this earth for about 300,000 years. And, with changing tides and pressures and temperatures, we evolve a little bit. We're really good at evolving. We're still here. We're not the strongest animal out there. We're not even the fastest. We're pretty smart, I guess. But the lifestyle we live now is only about 100 years old. We have not evolved for it. And that's why we are slowly or moderately speeded killing ourselves, and killing each other. But we have drugs to overcome that kind of. And that's the model. That's current day medicine. I'm going to slow down your ill.
Wow. Yeah. Yep. It's more like a Band-Aid, right? You're just kind of masking the problems. And I mean, I've heard of even people taking the ZQL type stuff to just make themselves feel like they're sleeping. They're kind of passed out throughout the night, but are you really getting deep sleep, REM sleep? Again, it goes back to that awareness. Maybe you just don't know, you're having a hard time sleeping, you're stressed out. Yes. Hey, this thing knocks me out for 10 hours. I'm just going to take that.
And I will tell you, every time in my new life, when I'm not seeing 30 patients a day, in the office today, I think I saw 4 people, and that's the way it should be. It's nice. I gave them all time. I'm talking to you. I can research things. Yeah. Every time I research some things, we humans, prove to me 4 packs of cigarettes is bad a day. Who are you kidding? Whatever. Anyway, so we need a study for everything. But lo and behold, it's probably 3 years ago, I saw this thing. So ZQuil, a lot of times that's Benadryl, that's diphenhydramine. And I just had to laugh. I think it was a Saturday, being a nerd that I am. I'm reading this little article, and it's like, yeah, National Institutes of Health or something like that. And it talks about, hey, it turns out that long-term use of that. So if you get stung by a bee, Chris, use it. If you have a bad night, you could take it, actually. That's fine. Anything in moderation. But it was chronic use. And I have patients been on it for 10 years. And they said more than, I think it was 2 years cumulative use associated with higher risks of Alzheimer's disease. And I was like, that's not nothing.
Right. It's kind of a big deal.
Well, and I've worked in nursing homes, and some people might be 90 years old, and I've seen people in their 50s in a nursing home. Like, how does that happen? Is that normal for this animal species? So we're not talking about like, yeah, it's going to make you like 1 IQ point lower. No, you might lose your mind. That's crazy.
That's
and
nuts.
The question that I play with, Chris, is to say, why can't you sleep? Like the why. We don't ask that. That's a functional medicine approach.
Right.
And what I come back to, this is why I was chuckling about that study is, in the end, it's always like, and be a human. Like, oh, okay. Wow, that's weird. And eat food that humans eat that you can pick or kill. Oh, fascinating. So don't eat plastic? Apparently not. And like for physical activity, so sitting on your butt or laying on the couch like a jellyfish for 12 hours a day is not good for you? Huh, prove it. Like it goes back to, it really is in a way kind of simple, because it's all about being a freaking human. Right. We evolved this species, for 300,000 years. And then in the last 100, so a blink of an eye, we said, nah, I don't do that anymore. I don't walk anymore. I don't eat food. I eat food products. And guess what? I can't sleep, so I need to take my ZQuil, like you said.
Right.
And man, that's the pandemic. It's crazy. And I'm pumped up today. So
this is like right up my alley. I follow all these pages that talk about the same thing.
Yep. So you're gonna have to tamp me down. But in this presentation I did last week, so 1900 cause of death was across the board infectious disease. Like, yes, it was mid 1800s that few people, but famously was Louis Pasteur with the germ theory. Fascinating, awesome stuff. We still didn't know what to do about it, so it took almost 100 years. So. Antibiotics started coming out maybe in the 1920s, and not even until the 1940s, middle of World War II, is when penicillin became a little bit more widespread. Fascinating. That's good stuff. That is really good, because if I get an infection on my toe and I die because of it, that's ridiculous. Yeah. So that's a great advancement in modern medicine. The problem is we took that and said, no need to be a human anymore. So 2019, causes of death, COPD, stroke, heart attack, diabetes. And my wife said, well, I guess it's kind of good that it's 2019, not 2020 with COVID. And I was like, who is the most susceptible to COVID? Oh, COPD, stroke, cancer, diabetes, the same bloody things. Right. So think about how silly, and I'm saying this very gently, how silly of a species we were to set ourselves up for that. That's terrifying. So why did COVID scare us so much? And again, I don't know everything about COVID because nobody does. It's still novel. We don't know a lot about it. I'm not saying it's not real at all. My dad died of COVID within the first month. So it's real, but you know who doesn't do that badly with COVID? Healthy people. Again, I don't want people calling me. I have some patients with chronic COVID symptoms, and it's terrible, long haul stuff. There's stuff we don't understand. But as for averages, healthy people seem to do pretty well. So what did I not see on the news reports and all that stuff? Like, hey, check your vitamin D and make sure it's optimal. Not good enough, optimal. Or maybe go for a walk instead of sitting in your basement scared with a mask on and a plastic bag over your head. So nobody talked about health and wellness. They're still not talking about health and wellness, and it's insane to me. So again, the example, I'm not a COVID, whatever, blah, blah, blah person. It's real, but maybe we should look at the humans as a whole.
Right. And that was one thing too, because I'll listen to a different podcast and I'm listening to one again where he's very vocal and has his thoughts about that whole thing and the politics behind it. But it's interesting hearing what was happening in 2020, 2021. Obviously, here we are, 2023. So some time has passed, but you start to look around and you're like, well, all my healthy friends that are working out and they're going and running marathons and stuff, they all seem to be fine based on what I can see. And of course, we never have heard that. Like, no one's ever said, hey, exercise, get some sunlight, vitamin D, right? Start to do some walking at the very least outside in an empty field. Like, that's safe.
Yes. Yep, and eat food.
And eat real food. Yeah, no fruit roll-ups or any of those things.
Well, and one thing I'll throw out there, just in case anyone takes this part of the conversation a little more to heart, is like I'm thinking of a guy, one of my patients, and he was probably about 46 at the time, and he got slammed. He got really sick, and he was a healthy guy, like literally was.
Yeah.
I know him from town and all that sort of stuff. The thing that we have to ask when something hits is this presentation average or is it an outlier? The reason why is if it's average, so if Ebola hits Denver, I don't know if I should say this out loud, but like you can wet your pants because it's going to be bad. You know what I mean? Like everyone's susceptible. That's a bad one.
Right.
But flu, is there a healthy stud marathon runner guy who got the flu and got really sick or died? Yes. But is that average or is it an outlier? And from what I can understand, especially with COVID stuff, is it seems to be these outliers.
Right.
And we should think about like maybe there's a vitamin imbalance or maybe there's something that we don't understand yet. So then again, do I need to hide in the basement with my family with our plastic bags over our heads? Or do we go live like humans, go for a hike, go do things, eat food, you know, have a nice healthy steak or something like that, some broccoli, those things, and have interactions and social contacts and touch and all these other things.
Right, right. And I like what you said earlier about just being a human, because like that really has changed so much. If we think about the kids being born with the iPad in their hands, pretty much playing or watching YouTube, you know, like Coco or whatever, Coco Melon, those little shows that they watch on Netflix, that was never the case. I've even seen, you know, obviously things change so fast and the technology's progressed, but I saw one of those memes that said, you know, kids these days will never understand this feeling. And it was like three kids talking to each other on a bike in the neighborhood, you know, before technology, before we had cell phones and everybody had an iPhone or whatever. You had to go outside, you got sunlight, you fell, you scraped your knee, right? You rode your bike. And now you can just call Uber, you can get burritos delivered to you in 10 minutes with the Chipotle app.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, I'll go back and then forward again, but like you're in the middle of what, 75 hard, right? Didn't you tell me you were doing that?
Yeah.
So what, I know there's a couple of nuances, but whatever. What is that? I'll tell you. It's being a human. So did your ancestors ever have to pick up something heavy and move it? Yeah. Okay. Did they have to do CrossFit? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? I have to think I'm probably a mutt. So I don't know who my ancestors were really, but I guarantee you they walked or they died. Period.
Yeah.
They worked together as So, and they had to work together as a tribe. So then they had to move. They had to have a tribe, sense of purpose. No job's more important than the other in a tribe. They're all important. And then they had to have sleep, stress relief, and then nutrition. So those 5 pillars. So what are you working on? Nutrition, physical activity, probably sleep, stress relief is in there, sense of purpose. Like, okay. Yeah. So people say, but it didn't work for me. It's not perfect. Yeah, whatever. It's a program. But yeah, I can get behind that.
Right.
What works? God, now I'm getting into some specific things, but like some people say, yes, but my friend told me that they ate food out of this box that came from a lab and they lost weight. Like, all right, good for them. And they may have, but how long?
Is it sustainable?
Yep. So
that's the thing. And it's all about the lifestyle change. I know that's one thing that Andy Frisella talks about with 75 Hard. It's like long enough where it's not a 7-day little one-hit wonder where you lose 10 pounds and then you put it all back on. Because to create a habit, I've seen different numbers about this, like 60 days or 65 days or whatever. With enough time and repetition, it becomes ingrained. You don't have to think about it as much. I grab the gallon every single morning, right? I'm just like ready. It's ready to go. I finish my day and I put the new gallon on the desk for the next morning so that I don't even have to think about it anymore because I've done it for enough days where it's become part of this lifestyle and routine, which I think therein lies the problem, is that we're not being taught these routines. We're being taught to eat those cosmic brownies and like chicken tenders at lunch and Frito-Lay chips and to sit all day in front of the TV watching TV or playing video games.
You'll not be shocked, but you'll laugh. It was probably a month or two ago. I saw this other stat. Again, don't quote me the exact number, but I think it was something like 54 point something % of Americans eat at least one fast food meal a day. I was like, oh. It was something like 33 or 34% have two. And I was
I believe it. Well, just with like everything being busy and just, a lot over the last couple of years, I think people changed their habits and routines too, because with a lot of restaurants being closed or doing outdoor
Yep.
dining or like limited seating, the drive-through seemed like a convenient option. So people were being retrained in a way, or even with Amazon, we heard about the
Yep.
amount of people who joined Amazon that were like previously shopping in person. Now this was
Sure.
the most convenient way. And so that becomes part of their new habit and routine. Oh, let me just go through the drive-through and pick up some fried chicken instead
Yep.
of going to the grocery store and having to freaking cook my meals and do dishes, right? I mean, it's kind of
Yeah.
sold and packaged as convenience, but they don't tell you about what the expense is, like your health.
Yes. Yes. And guaranteed you will get. Some people could. I just talked to someone on the phone about depression before this. So I was saying the difference is this person I was talking to, he looks good, like he's energetic and stuff, but he's suffering. And I said the difference is with anything chronic is some people look better doing it. So, some people are like, oh no, I have my whatever fried chicken, yeah, whatever else. And no, I feel fine. And then, yeah, now. But as far as an animal goes, if we had this new animal species, and I said, if you keep this thing alive for 5 years, you get $3 billion. Like you're motivated. You're gonna figure out what it should eat. We don't do that for ourselves.
Right.
So you will get, the expectation. If we said again, average is not normal. So normal for a human is to go strong until you're dead. If it's 95, well, I'm going to go to 94, 364 days, and then I'll die. I don't want to have 30 years of downtime.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we've missed. So anyway, yeah, I'm just going off. So the food thing, so it's average. If you're 40, Chris, you should have high blood pressure. If you're 45, you should have some high cholesterol. And we have pills for those. And then if you're 50, how about some diabetes, just as a little sprinkling on
More
top?
pills. Yep.
And that's average. And that's okay because we have pills that will not cure it, but it'll slow it down. You will have problems. So there are alternatives. 99% of the time, probably 95, you can get rid of 95% of the time, you can get rid of all the stuff just by being a human.
Absolutely.
But what I've come up with is there's two camps ish. There's living in the wild, which we're designed for, but I don't know about you, but I'm not going to quit my family and go live in the middle of the woods somewhere. And then there's living in the zoo with your mind shut off, and you just show up and the zookeeper tells you everything's okay, take a few pills, stop complaining. You should be more grateful and just take a pill for it. But there's somewhere in the middle. And that's for me, and I think you're going through this too, is to say, I see the zoo. I don't think I can completely leave it because I'm not ready to do that. Like, God, but how do I participate and know and not be a slave to the zoo?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And funny, my wife and I were watching, there's like a documentary on Amazon, I think it was on Amazon Prime called Wildcat or Wildcats or something. I don't know
I
if
haven't
you've
seen it,
seen
but I
that.
saw the preview.
I
Yes.
saw the
Yeah.
preview and then we kind of were just like, let's just check it out because we like cats. We have two cats, but this is
Sure.
obviously like a little cat that is becoming a big cat. But
Yep.
they live out there. I think it was in Peru, if I'm not mistaken, in the jungles. And we were just
Sure.
like, dang, they have to build their shelter. Like he's just using the
Yep.
restroom behind the tree, kind of like the combat day. Funny side note,
Yep.
there was no power at the dome. I know you guys were out camping. Green team was camping a little further out, but at the dome itself,
Yep.
I didn't really know what I was walking into. I thought that there would be power and the fridge was working, and that maybe there would be a microwave for the meals that I brought. No power. 20 degrees. I feel like it must have been 30 degrees in there because I was freezing cold with thermals on. I slept with my ski
Yep.
jacket and I was still cold. But it's just funny because once you start to think about like going full nature of living in the
Yeah.
wild, off, finding berries, hunting animals, that's a totally different thing, but it is human.
Yes.
As opposed to, oh, let me just sit here and like ring my bell and like Lucky Charms gets dropped to my bowl and I'm happy
Yeah.
because I'm just doing what society is telling me I should do, and I'm buying the cereals that I see advertised on TV and
Yep.
things like that. So two different extremes
Yep.
for sure. I want to be somewhere in the middle.
Well, exactly. And what I tell people is, if the zookeepers put out a big trough of Lucky Charms, as you said, and Chris runs up to it and just gobbles it up, like that's not freedom. That's what we do. We're like
Right.
animals, pigs at a trough. Now, if on the other hand, Chris is like, you know what? It's Tuesday. I want Lucky Charms. Eat them. That's what I tell people. You will not drop dead today, Chris. I guarantee you $1 billion.
You can
You
handle a
won't drop
bowl of
dead.
Lucky Charms. Yeah.
If you want to eat it, but you might be a little bloated tomorrow, or people complain they feel really tired after. And you know what? If you want it, it's your birthday, whatever it is, do it. I tell
Yeah.
you, that's freedom. That's
Right.
some of the stuff. So do I have to be 100% on all the time? Uh, Depends. Some people are really sensitive. I know some people that are 98 too. And that's unfortunate because you say, hey, you want to go out to eat? They're like, not really, because there's nothing I can eat at that restaurant. That's
Right.
lousy.
Right.
I like, occasionally going out with a friend or something. But I present this to new people that I meet in the office here is I present myself jokingly as sexist. So I say, especially if there's a couple, I'd be like, oh, Chris, man, your wife, like they're so whiny, they get bloated, they get PMS, they get a headache, they get moody. We don't get any of that. We just drop dead sooner. To make a point that a lot of men, we're like, oh no, I can, have my 15 beers and two pounds of bread and all this other stuff, and I'm fine. I'm 50 pounds overweight, but yeah, no, I feel fine. I feel great.
Right.
And then they have heart attack at 50 because that's average, and everything's okay. Like, so I'm not a sexist. I'm not a sexist. So some people are more sensitive than others, and you say that that's lousy. This happened with my daughter, my 18-year-old, when she was 15. Did her lab, she wasn't feeling quite right. Her thyroid antibodies are really high. Her thyroid is still okay, and I know because I study this stuff that thyroid proteins are a lot like gluten proteins. So she goes hardcore, and I mean not gluten free ish.
Like no
if it might be zero, soy sauce, natural flavors, heck no. Within 3 months, her antibodies were normal, and to me that is a big deal.
Yeah.
So now you tell a 15-year-old. I remember doing this. I'd be like, hey, you know what's really good about that though, Emily? Is your friends that look like rail thin models and are eating Chick-fil-A every day and doing all these other things in 30 years from now? She's like, Dad, I'm 50, look like I don't care. Well, she's like, I don't care about 30 years from now, and that's why when I'm talking to someone who's going through this stuff, like it sucks.
Yeah.
Everyone else, because everywhere I see, where do we see? I see on a phone, I see on TV. Everyone else looks great. And they're all eating their Lucky Charms and doing their stuff. And they look so happy. They're riding a horse. And that's the zoo. The zoo tells you that stuff is good for you and it's fun. And isn't it great? Don't you want to be free and eat your Lucky Charms and put some sugar on it?
Yeah.
I'm just throwing all these things out there, but I have a patient who just sent me a message probably about a week ago. Freaking made my day. He goes, hey, since we reviewed my labs 3 months ago, I need to come in and recheck and all stuff, but I changed one variable. He goes, after talking to you, I didn't want to go too crazy, but I cut out breakfast cereal. And he goes, my weight's down 7 pounds. And I was like, no, that's outstanding. Like, good on him. He woke up a little bit.
Yeah.
I didn't make him do anything. I always tell people, I'm not your dad. I've got 2 kids. That's plenty. But for him, he changed the variable and he saw 7 pounds of fat. So that's outstanding. And then for me, what we do as a practice is we do deep dive stuff. So we check inflammation markers. So he's got some pending labs, but it's not all so obesity, fatness, overweight, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that I can see. You can see it, but you can't see depression. You can't see diabetes. You can't see cholesterol. So I tell people, like, if your problem is weight, like, thinks to be you, it really does, because everybody can see it. It's out there for the world. But guess what? In my world, I don't care which one you have. If you have chronic dysfunction, you're distracting from being your best.
Right.
So,
that's powerful, just knowing where you're at. And I mean, I always think of that quote, what gets measured gets managed. And I hear people talk about whatever you want to improve, like whether it's your net worth, check your accounts, check your balance every day, look at what the money coming in, the money going out, what are you spending money on, right? And you're going to start to do better with saving and investing and, stashing away cash and not making frivolous expenses. Similarly with what you're eating, like how do you feel? What's your energy level like? Do you feel bloated and gassy after eating a certain meal, or do you feel energized and you don't have that 2 p.m. crash as they talk about? I mean, there's whole energy drinks marketed around that 2 p.m. crash feeling. Well, why are you having that crash? It goes back to people aren't asking why. They're just trying to cure the symptoms with these random band-aids that don't actually solve the root cause.
Well, and one thing I'll throw out there, and I kind of touched upon this, but is the fact that you can't see chronic illness.
That's it.
And I get to see it because people talk to me here. So I can tell you that and again, this is part of this weird thing, and I'm going to sound like I'm talking conspiracy stuff. I don't know who the zookeepers are. There are zookeepers, and
If we get suicided, it wasn't us. We're both very happy and healthy.
no, and I won't talk about any social media books or anything like that.
Yeah.
Facebook, but there is a zookeeper. What the heck was I going to say about it? I just lost my train of thought.
Oh, I'm sorry. I threw you off. You're
No,
talking about the zookeepers and
yeah. Oh my gosh, it was good stuff. It's gone.
dang, it'll
It's
come
gone
back.
for
It'll
it's
come
gone
back.
forever.
Probably better that way. So the social media people don't talk about
Exactly.
it. But you were
Yep,
talking
we did
about you're not trying to get into conspiracy theory type stuff. I don't know if that rings any bells, but
Oh, dear God, Chris. I know what I was going to say. So yes, so when you and I, and again, I probably got 10 or 15 years on you, but when I got to be careful saying this, but when I was a kid going to school in the 1980s, yeah, this is touchy stuff, but I'll bring it up. Did anybody ever kill themselves? I'm sure. But as an 8-year-old, I never heard one single story. So the fact that nowadays, and I've heard it put this way, that if anyone bullied me when I was a kid, and I'm sure there were some little things or whatever, but like I went home. And if someone wanted to call me and harass me, they had to call with that long extension cord phone. And my sister better not be on the phone, or the other sister, or one of my 3 brothers. So like I had a respite. I had an escape. I could be home, or I could be riding my bike with the 2 friends, like you said, and all that stuff. There was a break. And I heard this a few years ago, and I thought it was like it really made me wake up a little bit. And it was like, nowadays, if you're a kid and someone bullies you, the entire school knows within a nanosecond, and it's on Snapchat, and it's on this, and it's on that. So when you wake up at 2 in the morning and you have that pit in your stomach and you're afraid, you look at that damn phone because you see the light go on, and someone's like, Becky's a loser, or whatever it is. So that's one extreme, one way. But then for us adults, we don't do that because we're sophisticated and better. But instead, what we see is all the pretty people. Nobody puts a pic. Occasionally someone does this, but like all these vacations, all these beautiful places, look at this amazing food thing, whatever. And it hit me a couple of years ago because I had, we'll say a friend of a friend who like tried to kill herself. And I was like, what? And this is a professional, someone I've known for years. And like it actually, I was leaving an orthopedic appointment myself. I actually had to sit there for a few minutes. That really, I was like, what the hell's going on here? They look so nice. Like they look so beautiful. They look so whatever. Mm-hmm. And it made me think that we're definitely living in a house of cards.
Yeah.
And those people come to my office and then they break down in tears and say, yeah, I'm unhappy. Why? Well, because I should be happy, or because I have everything. Yeah. What do you want? And that's when it goes back to being a human. So right. Our ancestors did not have it all. I'm actually almost done The Comfort Crisis. That's another interesting book. But talking about our ancestors, do you think the Chris from 100,000 years ago in Colorado today was a little chilly? Yeah, you don't look that cold to me right now. But just as a thing, you and I would not be sitting here across the waves talking. We'd be walking, looking for dinner, because otherwise we're going to go hungry tonight. So we're hungry, we're cold, we're too hot, muscles are sore. I'm walking on a broken ankle. Glad we don't have to do those things, but that's why you're doing 75 hard. You don't carry toilet paper when you're going. You probably carry some weight or whatever you're doing.
Yeah, right.
That's what so it's, and I'm not making fun of you here. Like I'm doing the same thing. A couple of months ago, I had a surgery on my elbow. I wasn't doing anything upper body. And I was like, after a while, I was like, all right, excuses. What do I need to do? So I got a weighted ruck. So I walk the dogs every day for about 3 miles. So bring extra 45 pounds with me.
Nice.
It's just a little thing, but it's those little things. It's that.
Right.
I don't think my posture has helped, but I'm sitting on a bouncy ball right now. So that it's supposed to be better, but I still slouch and stuff. Like I should be up and walking. Right. So anyway, I guess the point there is, I think you and I are both trying to practice what we preach, but it's hard because it's hard to know how much, this and that, whatever. So for some people, they're, when it comes to physical activity specifically, like we're a lazy culture as far as physical activity goes. Because like you said, you don't even have to go to the grocery store anymore.
Right.
Come right
you
to you.
Go anywhere.
Nope, you don't. Some of my favorite little books and resources these days. So Comfort Crisis is a pretty good one, but Tribe by Sebastian Junger, that's a good one. You might like that one a lot.
Tribe, and I'll have to check that out.
Tribe, yes, I have incorporated that to a lot of what we do here. But that's the thing, like you're talking about hunters and all that stuff. Everyone always thinks like The hunter, yeah, that's the big one, yeah. And I say, yeah, but if Chris and I were in a tribe, maybe he's a good hunter. Maybe I'd make really good baskets. And the thing is, if Chris, the thing is, if Chris wants to move food, he needs my baskets. And if I want to put something in them, I need his meat. And then Becky over here maybe makes beads so we could trade them for something else. Like we were all a tribe.
Right.
And the thing is, if you're out hunting and you broke your hand, oh, I'm going to crap my pants first. I'm afraid now that we're not going to have meat. So what do you need me to do to help you? I'm
How
there
do I
for
make
you.
baskets? Yeah.
Well, but how do I help you get back to hunting? And it's vice versa.
Yeah.
And he talks about this in that book, actually. He said, but now some of our cities, you can go to a week and not see a single face you recognize. So what does that do for your subconscious psyche that wants to feel comforted and know that everything's okay? So a lot of us are living like scared animals. And if you put that scared animal, what happens? It doesn't sleep very well. Oh, okay. And
Right.
actually, the animals still eat probably better food. We're like the raccoons at the dumpster. And then oh gosh, yeah, it's just an animal actually in the wild would try to get away from the threat, whereas we just sit there and medicate it. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, very weird.
Yep.
And it's just like the society that we grew up in. I mean, even the cereal thing you talked about before, I just grew up eating, I loved Lucky Charms, the freaking marshmallows and stuff, and like Cinnamon Toast Crunch,
Yep.
Cocoa Crisps or whatever. Nesquik had some cereal. Like I literally would see the commercials.
Yes.
We would get it. It's like the it turns into chocolate milk and then you can drink it at the end. And even in college, I remember I had been trained for so many years to eat cereal for breakfast that I would just get I would get something I thought was healthier, but it had like little chocolate chip things in it or something, right?
Yeah.
It definitely was not healthy.
Choco Crisps, I think
No, this
were.
one was like the Kellogg Special K with like chocolate chunks, but it kind of had like the little Kellogg flake things that are wheat, supposedly.
Yep.
But for the longest time, I was just eating cereal because it's convenient. I like cereal and milk. It's easy to eat, to clean. It's light. Yeah. Supposedly, it feels that way. Yeah, versus Chris, now eating steak and eggs.
Healthy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, like eating steak and eggs, it takes more time. I got to do dishes. So I have been making a ton of eggs all the time and steak as well. But there's a couple extra steps. It's not as easy as just milk and cereal and a spoon.
So, Chris, you want to hear a story about why that is? Why you evolve? So, our ancestors either skip breakfast if you're out hunting. So intermittent fasting for some people, but that if I don't have access to good food, I can skip a meal. I will survive. I guarantee you. But two, you'd eat leftovers from the night before, or like you said, maybe some eggs, maybe some meat, whatever, maybe some vegetables if we have access. Sure, fine, done. So why did that change? Hundreds of thousands of years. When did it change? 50s, 60s, 70s. So why and how? And it turns out a couple of stories behind that. But one is things in medicine. If you discover something today, it will not be mainstream 20 years. That's how long it takes. So in the 50s, there were some studies that showed that high cholesterol, because remember, cause of death, infectious disease, and it was transitioning. So they said, people are having conditions with high cholesterol, diabetes, blindness, all this stuff. They said, so what has a lot of cholesterol?
Meat.
Eggs do. Eggs and meat. Let's cut them out. What do we replace it with? Well, we need something as post-World War II, so we need something that's shelf stable. Let's just take out all the healthiness in it, all the good nutrients, and you're left over the stuff that'll sit there for months. This is great. That's white bread. That's pasta. That's all the stuff. That's where it kind of really started. And then all of a sudden, they said, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And in the obesity code, Jason Fung, doctor, says, I thought it was pretty funny. I had the audiobook. He's like, breakfast, the most important meal of the day for cereal companies. So that's what it came out to. So then all of a sudden, when they look back at that study,
Sorry, Siri thought I was talking to her. And then I couldn't hear you.
They're listening. They're listening. They're coming.
Yeah, see, the cereal companies are listening to us. They don't like it. But I the last thing I heard before that whole thing just happened, but you said cereal, the most important meal of the day.
For the insurance company, for the cereal company. Yes,
absolutely.
So this whole thing, when they look back in the studies, it actually didn't show that. And I will tell you, they've done so many studies, 100%. The amount of cholesterol you put in here does not equal the amount in your blood.
Wow.
They're different. You make all the cholesterol in your body. There's a teeny bit that you absorb, but there are people that eat zero cholesterol and they have really high numbers. and people eat a ton of cholesterol and have really low numbers. So like, again, we need a study to prove what should a human eat. This is unreal, Chris. It really is. So
that's nuts. Yeah.
Anyway. Yep.
Well, that's the power. I remember I interviewed, it's been on my like to-do list, like, I should do this forever. I think I told you that too. I was just like, I've been wanting to do blood panels and like, you know, just, it's one of those things you're not used to, again, just in terms of routine. You just go for an annual physical. You kind of get checked out. Maybe you take some blood. They check those main things like your cholesterol's, here's the number, your heart rate's good. Cool. You're healthy. See you next year. Right. That's it.
Yep.
People aren't really used to this because it's not really like, hey, you should go every 3 months or twice a year and get your blood markers checked, see where you're at, test things out, change a variable, remove gluten, see how you feel and how you react. So people are just kind of going through life chronically fatigued and have inflammation and illness, and they have no idea why or what's off with their blood panels.
Well, it's because they're deficient in medications. They need more meds. It's a joke out there is to say,
answer, yeah.
Well, yes. Why do people have high blood pressure? Because they're blood pressure medicine deficient. Like, that's the stupidest thing ever. I mean, it's a joke when we say it that way, but the average face-to-face with a primary care is about 8 to 10 minutes. And half of that is them talking. So that means you have about 4 minutes to get your story out. So if you have strep throat, that you could do. If you have a heart attack, 911, that's pretty easy. You need your appendix removed, hospital. Acute care we're really good at, but anything chronic, the unconscious or the outward statement is, no, you're fine. And the joke, even in the medical community, and not like it's a joke, but what they tell you is, well, you know, Chris, now that you're 40 or 50 or 60, fill in the blank, you should feel kind of achy. It's expected. I feel achy, so it's fine. If you need, take some anti-inflammatories. It's expected, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So yes. So like, for instance, the blood panels, like you just referred to, like when you go to a primary care, they use your insurance. Again, inappropriate. You should be using insurance for catastrophic things, but whatever. Yeah. They're going to say, well, what, you know, if you're 35, what is the recommended preventative task force? Nothing. Oh, so you don't need any labs. No, you're healthy.
And there could be underlying issues that you have no idea about.
Well, we just said toddlers have pre-diabetes and type 1 diabetes. Do you think a 35-year-old is not on the edge? And I have a lot of people, actually, this might surprise you, but I have a lot of patients that are athletes and pre-diabetic.
Really?
And yes, yeah, it's shocking. I just had another one this morning. And the first thing we say is, what the hell? Because I was told that cut out sugar, cut out candy. I don't eat sugar and candy. So how can I have pre-diabetes? And it turns out that all that stuff you and I just referenced to like the 1970s and stuff, processed, ultra processed, added sugar, gluten and dairy for a lot of things. So all that bread, pasta, rice, that'll do it. And one guy, he really was pretty dialed in. And again, it's not about effort. He thought he was doing everything right, but then it turns out it was some of his sports drinks and things like that. This guy's an endurance athlete. Like our ancestors, did they like pick up their goo shots and all that stuff before they went on a run to get to the next village, or they just sucked it up? And there was something years ago, I forget who it was. Sorry, I can't give credit, but he was talking about his ancestry was Greek or something like that. So he really thought about this because he was a runner and he'd have all those performance things and carb loading. And he thought about like the ancient Athens, the Athenians, like what did they do when they had to run and warn the next village? They started running barefoot. And what did they drink? Whatever they found along the way, and maybe had a couple olives off this tree. So that's what he did. He did it. It was like 15 years ago, but yeah, he did that. He trained. He literally he went barefoot and the countryside, and he actually did it. And he said it was amazing. Like, I actually had plenty of energy. I didn't need all that other stuff.
Right.
So it's weird because, you know, Michael Jordan and you need your Gatorade and all this other stuff from the 80s and 90s. Yeah, no, not really.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Anyway.
I mean, there's so many different things, and just advertisements and promotions. And I remember I was watching the Michael Jordan thing on Netflix, right? The documentary. And it's cool seeing hey, you want to be like Mike, you got to drink this. And it's clearly promoting these products, big sugary Gatorade or whatever. Like you see the amount of sugar in those drinks. And I guess it's probably, I don't know if it's getting easier to identify now, but there's more information out there. So if you want to find something, you can like watch infinite amounts of content on the macronutrients of a certain thing. But back then you're kind of just like, okay, the TV is telling me this. That must be
Yep.
good. There's no internet to really check against. So I'm just going to go and buy that stuff and start consuming it. And you become hooked. And I mean, it's a whole cycle and process. I just remember even as a kid, I would go, I loved eating at the cafeteria. I loved their little
Sure.
brownie. I would like get the brownie every day, like the same thing.
Yep.
And you're just like, man, well, oh, you're a kid, you have a fast metabolism, you'll be fine, you'll go burn it off. But that creates those habits that then, the trajectory of our life is based on
Yep.
the habits that we form as a 3, 4, 5 year old, going to school, eating crap, not working out, not moving. Fast forward to
Yep.
50 or 60, and here you are, right?
Well, exactly. And it's funny you talked about the cafeteria, because another thing from Dr. Fung, with some of his books he talks about is, even in the 1950s, so that's like yesterday. The 1950s, you had breakfast at home, probably around 8 a.m. You went off to school. You probably had a leftover piece of chicken or sweet potato for lunch. And then you had dinner at like 5. That's it. Kitchen's closed. Grandma said, don't spoil your appetite. And now, kid has to have breakfast at 7. So we've moved the clock earlier. 7, who can go more than 3 hours without a meal? So then we need a snack. So have some graham crackers or maybe cookies. Then you have garbage in the cafeteria. You've seen that. It's and then afternoon you need another snack. You get home from school, maybe some Doritos, and then you have dinner at 7:30 when mom and dad get
Then you
home.
need another snack.
Now the whole intermittent fasting thing. So maybe we did not eat 24 hours a day, or even 12. Sorry, if the kid sleeps, maybe you'll say 8 hours. So that means 16 hours nonstop grazing like a cow.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, what if we really did just shorten that window? I'm not saying restrict your kids from eating. That's a different conversation. But just how did we come to this? And this is what I call new humans. And we have new problems.
Yes. New humans, new problems.
And back to what you referenced about checking lab panels and all that sort of stuff. Like, yes, when you go to the boring medical care, they're going to say Chris doesn't need anything. Or maybe we'll check a basic cholesterol, a basic thyroid, metabolic panel, liver and kidneys, and then a blood count. This is important, but that's this much. What we like to check, you should know your vitamin D. And there's reference ranges. And we formulate those by saying, who's not dead? Good enough. That's a reference range. Yeah. Not for me. Then there's an optimal range. So you should know, are you in the optimal range? So there's D, B12, folate, inflammation markers, there's ferritin, homocysteine, CRP.
See, and you're speaking, I don't even know what you're talking about at all. As a random normal, not normal person, not that you're not normal, but like as a civilian who has no medical knowledge at all and just thinks that a multivitamin's fine, that just goes right over my head. So we tend to bury our head in the sand because I'm like, I don't get it. I'm just going to ignore it. And therein lies the problem as we go through these issues because we just have no idea, right?
Well, and for so many things, inflammation. So, all right, another clue. Ready? All chronic disease. So as acute care, I break my leg in 3 spots. We're good at that. But chronic things, anything chronic, we're horrible at. All chronic things are due to inflammation. And what I mean by that, and I heard this, when I first heard that, it was before I was ready to hear it. I was at a conference and this doc was up there talking about how depression is due to inflammation. I was like, oh, she sounds crazy. She's a psychiatrist. I guess she knows what she's talking about. Like, and I'm saying that in a nice way, a respectful way.
Yeah.
Now I know for you, that might manifest as, you're moody. For me, I might get overweight, obese. Next person might get skin, eczema, all this stuff, or chronic allergies, all these things, Chris.
Wow.
If we concede that they're not normal, then you say, but why do I have them? And that's very hard. That journey, my personal, my family, like we've been working on this stuff for 5 years. We're still working on it. Some have gut issues. Some have some other things. Are they more sensitive than other families? Probably. We just replaced all the floors and they got rid of the carpet upstairs. Now we have the laminate, whatever. It's been very expensive. It's been frustrating. And I've worked with patients who are so frustrated with how they feel sometimes. I had a woman once say, reviewed her labs. They're actually all quite nice. And she goes, God, I almost wish you just told me I had cancer. And she was serious. And that's that level of frustration.
It would make her feel better that she didn't feel good.
Give me a freaking name. Give me something
to blame.
Because she does not like living in the zoo. Her body doesn't like it. So anyway, so labs can be good at that stuff. And also, how are you doing? And one thing I find, Chris, is if you're only in the zoo and you stay in your stall and you're in your cage or enclosure, and that's all you know, you kind of blend in. But if you go out and do combat day or something like that, and there's people out there that are huffing and puffing and barely can move or whatever it is, you're like, I felt kind of alive actually that day. You know, that was some good stuff. And I was tired, got up early, went to bed late. It was
Oh, I was
freaking cold.
exhausted. We ran for hours up and down
Yep.
hills. Like,
Got pinged with some airsoft pellets. Where we were sleeping in that little gully area, we put it at about 5 to 10 degrees. Like a
it
couple of
was,
my toes are
I was
still numb.
freezing. Yeah, I was freezing in that inside
Yeah.
of that dome building. You guys were outside in a
Yep.
little tent.
Yeah. I didn't realize one guy had a stove tent, the other guy had a heated blanket. Bordering on stupid. I was worried about an amputation that first night, but then we got the right things. But I felt alive.
Yeah.
No regrets at all. It was wonderful.
I felt
So
alive too,
yes,
but my feet were a little numb the next morning. I was like, oh no, hope I don't have to chop off any toes.
no, yes. I'll bring sutures for next time. But that stuff. So what I'm getting at is when people don't do that, they just. The first time I ever had this thought, and I don't know if we should wrap it up or whatever, but the first time I had this thought, I was 30. I'm almost 50 now. I was at primary care in Massachusetts. I was working, and this guy came in, his knees hurt, blood pressure, he smokes, doing all this stuff. He's overweight, obese, bordering diabetes. And then when he leaves, he's kind of like limping down the hall. And I was like, God, that guy's so old. And I realized he was the same age as me. He was 30. And I was like, oh. We accept it. We look at that and we say, that's average. So no, damn it, Chris, it's not okay. That's not normal. I'm not judging. I don't judge people, but I say anybody, I call it, right. So I call it the do-over. Like you wake up, maybe you yelled at someone yesterday, you lost your head, which could be another inflammatory thing, but you have 2 arms, 2 legs today, and it's a do-over day. Just suck it up and do it over. Like that's the awesome thing. So a patient of mine who's a friend of mine, actually just recently, same age as me, right before Christmas, just had a heart attack, and he's okay-ish. But I was like, well, that sucks, and you get a do-over.
What are you going to change?
What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? Yep. So anyway, I guess my parting things would be for anyone who might be listening or watching or whatever is to say, are you optimal? Do you have any clue what optimal could be? And when you see people that are out there, I always use Tom Brady because I'm from Massachusetts, but like they talk about how he spends millions on all of his, biohacking stuff. Like sometimes you don't have to spend millions. Sometimes you have to stop going to fast food. You have to eat real food. What should I eat? That is a difficult question. What should I not eat is easy, but and a lot of people have remembered this, but if you could pick it or kill it, it's probably good for you.
Yep.
So, and you specifically, maybe tomatoes are no good. That's the fine tuning part of things, but whatever. Most people, if you could just start with that and moving like a human, and then we work on sleep. If you need a sleep study, go get that. I use a sleep machine. I'm not your stereotypical sleep apnea guy, but oh well. It's really sexy too. And then some form of stress relief, which can be the physical activity. And then where's your part in the tribe? What's your sense of purpose? Why are you even here? Because I found that, and I think that's probably the hardest one. If you don't have that, it kind of makes it difficult to be all the other things.
100%. I mean, that's really powerful. And just figuring that out, that's definitely a journey on top of like, hey, survival mode. Hey, I'm trying to figure out how to make money to pay my bills and everything's getting more expensive and eggs are like $10, right? So how the heck am I going to find my purpose and a tribe and worry about all those things when it's just easier for me to grab a bowl of cereal before I go to work, right? So I can see how it gets a little difficult where people are like, yeah, that's nice, but I don't have time, or I'm too busy, or I can't afford that. They're kind of stuck in the rat race of just survival, the hamster wheel. So, I mean, awareness, again, I always go back to that. If you're aware, hey, maybe the next time someone who's listening to this, they might be about to roll through that drive-through and they're like, you know what, I'm going to go to a grocery store instead and just make my food and find some berries and steak and stuff like that instead of just get the easy, convenient option. So that would be a huge change right there.
And I could tell you one final little story is I have some police officers, firefighters, and one of them, when I first met him about 1.5 years ago, he said, after a long shift, I mean, like hard work. I'm like, you idiots run into the firefight. We run away. But a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of panic. But he said, yeah, at the end of a shift, it's 12:30 at night. He goes, there are times I'm walking away from a counter. I don't know which counter it is. And I have a bag of something and I don't even know what's in there. I just ordered it. I don't even remember doing it.
It's just like a habit. Yeah.
So now he's kicking butt. He's awesome. His markers are all better because that's what we check. And now after a shift, he goes home and does about 10, 15 minutes of jump rope.
Nice.
And like, I mean, yeah, he dropped 30 pounds. His anxiety's better. He's still working on things, but like, it's not magic. It's
Right.
and in him, he's talking about his ancestry, and he's like, "Yeah, I think I'm Viking." I was like, "All right, you didn't win every battle, but we also didn't hide, our feelings about the dead and all that stuff. We had a party and we screamed and named the constellation. That's the tribe part.
Right.
So
Right.
that, so yeah, get a little passionate, but that's the kind of stuff that we do. But it's
Yeah.
not.
And
It
that was
doesn't have to
really
be that
cool.
hard.
It doesn't. It doesn't. And that was cool about the combat day thing too. I didn't have all the numbers saved, but it must have been your text in there where you're like, hey, it was nice to kind of sweat with people. And like,
Yep.
you reference that book, The Comfort Crisis, as well. A lot of times we get
Yep.
too comfortable. So it's nice to get out of our comfort zone and do something hard, do something challenging,
Yep.
and have that sense of community. Like I was talking to a bunch of the guys at midnight on the Friday night, and it was just so cool to hear, oh, you guys are having that. Or like we were talking about dancing. One guy hadn't danced with his wife in like 3 years. And, another guy he has an online course for like dancing and stuff like that.
Yep.
And we kind of broke bread and had community over these random things that like, I wouldn't just go talk to some random person at the park about dancing.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So community is very important, but I know you said you've got a client coming up here soon in about 15 minutes. So I want to be respectful of your time, but I really enjoyed this conversation, Adam. Where can people go to learn more about you, your clinic, work with you if they're here locally in the Colorado area? What's the best place to send them?
Yeah. So NUMED, NUMED, primarycare.com.
Cool.
And we do work with people locally, but we also do the Feed the Beast program, which is working on all the stuff, and that we can do remotely because it's you can do it anywhere. You can order labs anywhere in the country. So
yeah,
we did that so we can expand our reach and try to help people that want to be optimal.
Feed the Beast, is that what it's called?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a beast within each of us. Well, those beasts, the killer whale in the wild with its tall fin, the one in hanging out at the aquarium, it's all limp.
Wow. Yep. I didn't know that.
Even though it has the best food, it has the best everything, not wild. So we want to be wild.
I love that. I've seen the one where it's a lion in a cage and then a lion that's like all ruffled up and like got bloody scars, but it's free. And it's like only one of these lions is free, right? The other one's well fed, but it's in a cage and just doesn't know discomfort or struggle, but it also doesn't know freedom because it's just an illusion.
Well, the one in the cage needs antidepressants. It needs anti-diarrhea food, pills, and one will die younger.
Absolutely.
It's the caged animal. That's what we are.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, thank you once again for your time. I'll be sure to link that up in the show notes.
Perfect.
Everyone, make sure to go check out everything Adam's up to. He knows a lot. He's a very kind soul, and clearly he is practicing what he preaches. So thanks once again, Adam. Awesome conversation.
Thanks, Chris.